All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. My name's Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And we are a gaming and RPG centered podcast. And today we are going to be talking about the PS1 Classic. It seems Sony has been interested in this topic, so we're going to talk about what we think about it and also which RPGs we might want on the PS1 Classic. And then Sony has been busy talking about the PS5. It's been a lot of chatter on the internet about what this is going to involve, when it's going to come out, and also there's some hints that they might be working on a portable console, which is pretty cool in my opinion, but we're going to talk about that. And then just a couple hours ago, there has been a Final Fantasy VII leaked image from a photo on a job posting site that showed possibly some game footage, maybe some trailer footage of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. And other than that, Eric, what have you been playing this week?
I've been playing just between two things. Now, Dark Souls Remastered did come out this Friday. I haven't put a lot of time into it yet. However, I had a lot of stuff going on this weekend, but I do plan on putting some time into that game pretty soon. I've already beaten the Dark Souls game, so this isn't much new to me. I think they just made it look a little nicer and increased the frame rate and did a little small quality of life adjustment. So it's not too grand of a remaster, but it is good for people who didn't get like a PS3, 360, don't have a PC. But I mean, if people are itching to play that game again, it's out there for $40. But the one that I really have been putting some time into was actually a small $10 quote unquote indie game, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. Now, this game is really awesome if you're a fan of the older retro titles, especially Castlevania 3, which it is heavily based on, because the whole backstory to this is there is a game in development right now, a Kickstarter funded one by the person who helped created the Castlevania Symphony of the Night-like games, the Metroidvania ones, Koji Igarashi.
They have a very cool, if you go to their Kickstarter, sorry to interrupt you, but if you go to their Kickstarter page, there's a very, very cool like introduction video that he made trying to, get cash, but it's typically with those videos, you'll get like them like in a back room somewhere, like asking for money. But like this one, it has him like walking around a castle and he's like throwing wine bottles and stuff. And like at one point he transforms into a bat. It's pretty cool, but keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, that one's pretty entertaining. He's bringing back a lot of tropes that we've had fun with over the years with Metroidvania. But essentially Konami doesn't like to make games anymore. So he and various other people who left the company went off to start their own thing. And people have been clamoring for a new Castlevania-like game, like the Metroidvania ones, since the last one that came out was Order of Ecclesia in 2008. So we've definitely been waiting 10 years for one. And he decided in 2015 to kickstart one, and it met overwhelming success in the Kickstarter. But it is about 2018 now, and there have been a little hiccups in development, but from what we've gotten to play and try out, it seems like there is a very solid foundation going on here. Like I tried the demo myself. I'm a Kickstarter backer myself, and it felt good. It felt like a Metroidvania game. It does have like the 2.5D perspective, which I'm not a big fan of, but they still managed to make it look appealing aesthetics wise.
Right.
But it does look like they're finally going to announce the release date for it at E3 this year, which I'm really looking forward to. I've been really wanting to play this game for a long while now. And but I still have that kind of feeling in the back of my head. I'm like, oh man, this could be another Yooka-Laylee or Mighty Number 9. But yeah. I'm more optimistic for this one. I think they will deliver, but this is leading to the next thing that I've actually been playing, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, which is actually a little spin-off title that they released to hold us over till the actual game comes out later this year. And it's
made by the same guy?
It isn't.
Or same team?
But they did hire NT Creates to make the game for them.
Okay, yeah, that's right. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, and it's It is essentially a spiritual successor to Castlevania 3, and I don't know if you ever played that game, but it's like it's a classic level design Belmont style type game of the NES era.
Sure.
And you traverse through levels, but the cool thing is that you can switch between characters on the fly. So you have up to 4 characters that are in your group, and you switch between them to get through like certain obstacles or things you haven't before or couldn't reach before.
So
but
you have to use your party to get. You have to utilize your full party or a party-based structure to get through scenarios.
Not entirely. You can just go straight through the level normal, but there's a lot of secrets and stuff hanging around or different pathways you can take if you use other party members.
Oh, okay. I got you.
So it's kind of up to you. Yeah, it's kind of up to you how you want to do it. Now, in Castlevania 3, you pretty much had to hit like the select button and let a screen fade in and out to switch characters. But in this one, you press L and R and like bam, bam. It's, you switch between them. And they even have their
15 style.
Yeah, kind of. And they each have their own life bar. So it's really cool that you switch between them. So it's kind of like you have like 4 life bars to work with. But you have to make sure you switch between them. Each character has an advantage or disadvantage over another. Like I would compare between Zangetsu and Miriam. Zangetsu doesn't reach as far, but he hits a lot harder. And like Miriam has a longer range, but she doesn't hit as hard. I personally like to use her because it's more of a safety type deal. And if like a boss is down, I'll switch to Zangetsu and let him wail on the boss while it's down. It has a nice tactical approach to it. Now, granted, it is only about a 2 to 3 hour game at most. And it has 5 levels, but there are very well designed levels. And on top of that, the game is only $10. And that's it.
It's not too bad. And it's just supposed to tide you over, right?
Yeah. And it's just to hold you over till the actual game comes out. And I'll say it's a very well designed game. Indie Creates did a great job. They also did the Blaster Master remake-ish. And that one was really good also. So Indie Creates has a pretty decent track record. And it's definitely worth picking up, especially only for $10. If you're a Castlevania fan, like definitely grab it. It is right up your alley.
Very, very cool. It sounds like you've been going deep into this. So we're supposed to get a release date for the main game, hopefully this E3 this year. Yeah,
and I think a demo is coming with it also. I'm not sure if only for backers or it's just letting everyone play the demo, but I think they have something stored for us at E3 time.
Very cool. Well, you got me excited about it, so I'll check it out. I mean, this week for me though, I finished Xenoblade Chronicles. I know some of you are probably wondering why we're not reviewing that this week. So I finished it. I've been going through it, trying to collect what I can from the story. I feel pretty good about the story today. However, there's a few things with the gameplay that I still want to go over. And as you can see, Eric is having some issues with his unable to record today with his camera. Things happen, so we just want to make sure that we have both video and like everything's full deal for the review and discussion. So that'll be happening for sure next week. But that's what I've been playing this week, and I'm glad to announce that I am through it, and I feel really, really good about the game. I have a lot of positive things to say about the game, a lot of negative things to say about this game also. But we're going to be talking about that next week. So as Square-Enix would say, be excited and check us out next week for that episode. I think it's going to be really, really good. You know?
Yeah, I've had a couple of Memorial Day weekend things go on, and a couple of things have happened. So it's still going to be just audio only for me for this weekend, but everything will be back to normal next weekend.
Of course. Awesome. So, but moving on to our first topic. I'm going to switch over to my screen here. So we have, I was reading up on an article today from Smarter Living, but I've seen this this topic all over the place. But it's titled Forget the PS5. Sony's PS1 Classic is the NES Classic mini killer you've been really waiting for. That's this website's analysis, not the real like Sony's position. But essentially, with this announcement, it looks like Sony is looking into creating a PS1 Classic type console. There's been some speculation whether or not it could actually be out by the holidays this year. If it is, I would be definitely interested. But essentially, it's just like the name suggests. It would just be like the SNES and NES Classic, and it would ideally have some of the best games on the PlayStation Classic. That's going to be a tall order of things because there's a lot of great games on the PS1. You know, I think there's going to be some licensing issues given that most of these games were not created by Sony. But if they can make this happen, I would be really excited, especially if the games are optimized for HD televisions, right? Because right now, you know, you can go. I've been buying PS1 games again, and it's kind of annoying when you go to play it on the original console. And there's some things you can do, like you know, you can buy new cords and everything like that. But when you go to play it on your HD television, it just sometimes it looks a little muddy when it doesn't have to be. So if they can be optimized for HD televisions, which are the standard now, and I can go back and revisit some of these games, that would be awesome. Eric, did you have any like initial thoughts about PS1 Classic? If that would be exciting for you, or
I suppose so, but I don't know. I would have to see how well they upscale it, if they even do upscale it. For all we know, they may just make it 4:3 for each one.
Well, but that would be okay too. Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of am wondering why they can't just put it on the PS4 itself and just sell each game individually like they used to.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I think people want more. It's like, okay, so you have, I don't even know what their sales numbers are right now. Let's assume they have sold over 70 million PS4s. It's like, okay, you have 70 million potential customers there if you sell the PS1 game on the PS4 itself. And then now you're deciding to put them on this separate thing, this whole separate thing that people want to buy and may not even want half the games on it. And it's kind of a criticism I give Nintendo also for these classic consoles. It's like, you know, you got a bunch of people on your Switch, like focus more on trying to get it sold on the Switch than trying to get people to buy it on a separate peripheral for it. Like, I understand it's a nice little novelty item that you can just buy and just hook in, and maybe for someone who's not, like, just a fan of the older games but don't care for the most current one, I can understand the market appeal on that. But I'm kind of thinking that maybe you should market more towards your where it's more likely to sell, than trying to get the small few for the nostalgic. Now, granted, Super Nintendo and the NES Classic one sold out, so I may have to put a sock in my mouth a little bit there. But
well, I think the idea that I saw was that Sony's worried about PS4 fatigue and feeling pressure to get the PS5 out, and and that's kind of why they did the PS4 Pro, right? They tried to buy themselves some more time to delay the PS5 because they didn't want to come out with it so soon. So I think the idea is, well, maybe if we do a PS1 Classic, we might be able to put it off like another year or two, and get people really excited about these nostalgic games. I mean, I agree with you. Like, I would rather just go on the PS4 store and just buy games individually that I would want. But I mean, dude, I am pretty nostalgic about a PlayStation era, PS1 era, and I mean, if they were to do it, I could definitely understand the appeal to have all those games in one place. I just, for me, the only thing I can't imagine is, I feel like it hasn't been long enough, even though it's been like PlayStation 1 came out in 1994, so it's been over 20 years. But to me, I mean, if I start thinking about all the games they're going to put on the PS1 Classic, I can't imagine this system being less than like $150. Because like you have to get licensing, so let's say they put all the Final Fantasies on there. Square Enix is not going to let them put Final Fantasy 7 through 9, Final Fantasy Tactics, and they're going to put Xenogears. And what are they going to put? All them, like Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, like all these great franchises are going to all be on this one console. And like, it's going to be what, under $100? I don't think so. I mean, I could see them getting like one of each of those series, but you know, so my main thing is I'm interested in it. I'm just worried about the price.
To make it competitive, it's got to be under 100. I don't think there can be any exceptions to it. Mm-hmm. And
well, that's the thing. Like, are some of these big companies like those early games still have a big appeal? And I'm not sure that, like I said, like let's say Square Enix is going to want to put all their Final Fantasy games on a console that's $80, in which every purchase they get what percentage of the sales, when they could just leave it on Steam and be killing it, you know? Because like when they released Final Fantasy 9 on the PS4, even as a digital download, it was like killing it in the freaking shop for like months. I mean, so the idea that like they would like make it available to, you know, at such a discounted price, just to benefit Sony. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think Sony would have to work out some crazy deal with some of these companies to make that happen, you know?
Yeah, I think if Square Enix did put any RPG on there, it'd probably be one of their lesser RPGs, and I think they would let Final Fantasy 7 in.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 7 would have to be on the PS1 Classic, because that's like a defining game for Sony. If Sony cannot get Final Fantasy 7 on a PS1 Classic, in my opinion, they might as well not do it, because it's gonna everyone's gonna bring it up and be like, why is this game not on there? That would be like almost as bad as an SNES Classic not having like Super Mario or something on there, right? Like it would be almost as bad, in my opinion.
I think it would be a lot like Nintendo, where it would be mostly first party and then get some third party in there. Like they have game, like I'm looking up my shelf right now and I see a lot of old classic PS1 games. They had like Battle Arena Toshinden, Destruction Derby, what else up here? They have Warhawk, and
yeah, but see, that doesn't get me excited though.
Twisted Metal.
I see. Okay, I can see like if they put Twisted Metal on there, that'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't know, man. Like I'm not. If it to me, like a PS1 Classic has to tap into nostalgia. And I don't know, man.
I think they need to put more timeless games on there. Like the old 3D polygon ones might be really hard to sell. Mm-hmm. But if you put more like games that have held up really well over the course of time, and Final Fantasy VII is just a great exception because it's just such a phenomenal RPG that it's kind of like something you have to put on there, regardless of some people may consider it outdated or not outdated. Mm-hmm. I guess
I could see Square giving in for Final Fantasy VII, especially given that the 7 Remake is, you know, their next Final Fantasy game. So they would definitely want to push that. But go ahead.
I'm just kind of looking at my thing right now.
I mean, clearly, I feel like Legend of Dragoon would be on there because that was Sony created, right?
Yes, that is a. I forgot which company made Legend of Dragoon.
Sony owns it.
Yeah, but Sony owns it. They technically own. I think it was called Design Works back then. I think they own that company now that helped bring over games like Arc the Lad and the Lunar series. Mm-hmm. So it's always possible you may see some of those titles in there. And I'm a big personal fan of the Arc the Lad series. I'd recommend anyone to play through those 3 games. But just kind of looking through my thing, it's like a lot of it's like Square Enix related. That's
the thing. Like it's hard for me because like I know Sony could come out with like, in my opinion, a beastly PS1 Classic console, and especially in terms of RPGs, there's a lot of great games that they could throw on there. But the thing, like I said, and I think, you're in agreement, is it's just with like licensing. Like, I don't know how they're going to talk some of these companies into putting their games on there. Because like Nintendo gets away with it because most of the games, or a lot of the games that are on the SNES Classic, are games that Nintendo makes. Sony's made some good games, but I mean, they don't have as many first party games as Nintendo does. I mean, even like with the PlayStation, I remember Crash Bandicoot that series was very much associated with the PlayStation. But today you can get Crash Bandicoot on the freaking Switch. Like, so it's like they would have to work out with all these companies to release games. But if they could work all those out to a degree, I think at the bare minimum, they would have to have, for RPGs at least, they would have to have Final Fantasy VII on there. Absolutely. They can't get away with not having that on there. And I think they could get Final Fantasy Tactics on there.
That is a very possible one, yes.
Yeah, I don't see them putting all the Final Fantasies on there, even though that would be legendary. I don't know. Do you think they could get like Chrono Cross or Xenogears on there? Or maybe Vagrant Story?
Vagrant Story, either three of those games are possible. But it all depends on if Square Enix has anything going on with them. The chances are very likely not.
Yeah.
I mean, they let Chrono Trigger on the Super Nintendo one.
Yeah.
So,
and I think who knows what Nintendo told Square to put that on there,
So they might be cool with Chrono Cross also, because I don't think they have any Chrono game in the works right now. So
yeah. So I mean, I think they'd have to have Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy Tactics. I think they could probably get Chrono Cross.
I think Legend of Mana would be a definite contender to be in there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I could see that on there. Do you think they could get any of the like Dragon Quest or Star Ocean on there?
Well, Star Ocean 2 is the one that came out on PS1. First one's on Super Nintendo. What was the other one you said?
Well, Dragon Quest, what was it? Which one came out on the PlayStation 7?
Just 7. Possibly. I mean, Square Enix has a good enough relationship with Sony that it's possible to get any of those PS1 titles on there. It's just making sure that it doesn't step over the toes of anything that Square Enix is trying to do with their properties right now. Which I don't see them doing much with any of the PS1 lineup except 7, but the 7 remake is just going to be a whole different game. So it's definitely not stepping over toes if you put the FF7 original one on the PS1 Classic.
I mean, I think Sony should just come out with a Square Enix Classic console. just have Square Enix games. I mean, there's a lot of good games on that they could put on there. I don't know. How many games do you think they would put on a PS1 Classic?
30.
You think they'd get 30 games on there?
Possibly, yes. But the big thing also is when you emulate these, like Final Fantasy 7 through 9 are like roughly 2 gigabyte. So,
yeah, that's the thing. I don't know, like, because I know Nintendo, there's been a lot of talk about like an N64 Classic as well. And, once you start getting into like these 3D based games, I mean, I think the console's going to be.
I think you would have to put like at least 250 gigabyte of data on the thing to get the 30 games you want on there, because there are some PS1 games that don't require much at all, like maybe like 125 megabyte is all it needs for some games. But
watch it be like
Final Fantasy be like 2 gigabyte.
Watch it be like a streaming box.
No.
Like you buy it and it's just like all it does is connect to like a like a little interface on the internet, and like you just stream PS1 games to your TV.
Yeah, actually, now that you say that, they did release the PlayStation TV, which essentially was a Vita for that you could put the thing. And it's not a bad idea in concept. It was just some Vita games you couldn't play because it didn't have the back touch feature. But you could download PS1 games and download Vita games, PSP games on it, and whatever was essentially available in the PS Store, like Vita's PS Store, you could essentially put on the PS TV. And that kind of already sounds better than just releasing a PS1 Classic. Just go buy a PS TV for like $50 and hook that in and get, like, I think the memory card would probably be the most expensive thing, but if you got one of those in the PlayStation controller, it's like you have that whole library there already. Like you got 7, 8, 9 of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest 7, a bunch of RPGs to pick from, like Alundra's on there also for action adventure games. I mean, you get one of those, you're set. And I'm thinking to myself, if you pay $100 for a PS1 Classic machine when there's something like that exists out there, it's like, it's like, what, like, are you really getting the best deal out of this? It's like that PS1 Classic has to have some extra oomph or fluff to it to entice me to go out and buy it. Like, I don't even have an NES Classic or SNES Classic because I already own most of these games, and there's other easier ways to get access to these games and go out and fight grandma for the little $80 device during the holiday season.
Yeah. Well, what I did like about the classic Nintendo's classic systems that they released, I don't personally own them, but from what I've seen is they have multiple options to mess with the graphics, right? And so you can get one that looks like a very classic look, like how it looked back in the day. And then you can get like a much more polished version. Some of them have online capability that wasn't present before, so you could play some of these games with somebody else on the internet, like, and that kind of appeals to me in that, like, okay, these are things that are not available in the base game. I mean, if you emulated them, yeah, sure, you could do a whole sorts of graphic adjustments, but and a lot of them have online play available as well. But just the fact that it's more like it's a legal way to do it in your own living room, they make it easy. It's affordable. You know, that does appeal to me to a degree. And frankly, from Sony's perspective, they're probably looking at it like you and me are looking at it like, well, why would somebody buy this when they could, you know, just go to our store and buy a lot of these games? Or, you know, there's so many other options to buy these games. But in my opinion, they'd be fools not to release a PS1 Classic, given that the NES and SNES Classic have sold so well. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
it's like, why would you not do that? You know?
If they can offer some carrot on the stick to make it appealing, then, you know, I'll definitely change my opinion. But I just can't imagine them doing but so much and then trying to sell it for under $100.
Yeah, so I think that's my final thing with it is if I want the PS1 Classic to be under $100. It has to have at least 3 or 4 big name Square Enix RPGs on there for me to be interested. Well, not. I mean, there's some caveats with that, but in general, I think I would want Final Fantasy 7 on there. I would want Final Fantasy Tactics on there. I would want. I think it would be really cool if they could do Xenogears and Vagrant Story. I'd be okay if Chrono Cross isn't on there, but I know that's going to differ between different people. But I mean, Xenogears they're not really doing much with. It's just sitting on the PS Store for like I think $5. I think they could put that on there easily, and you know, it would probably be a big draw item. Vagrant Story, I think that would be the same thing. So if they could at very least get those 4 Square Enix games on there, I think that would be very cool. Now I'm thinking old Squaresoft era games, right? So I'm still thinking in my mind like Star Ocean and Dragon Quest as being like different companies because they were back then. But I mean, I still would like to see Star Ocean 2, Dragon Quest 7 on there as well.
Yeah, that's another thing. They would have to be their trademarks have to be change around and renew to make sure that they're Square-Enix products for getting them out there also.
Yeah. So, but if Sony can pull this off, I would be interested, to say the very least, at least to learn more. I would definitely be more interested in a PS1 Classic than I would a Atari VCS. That I can say for sure. So,
man, we rip on that Atari VCS like we do FF15.
Yeah, yeah. I think the order of us ripping is Final Fantasy 15 is in like the number 1 spot, and then like right under that is the Atari VCS. It's a close second. So
we're gonna get visits from Tabata and the guy who made that VCS just when we're sleeping.
Put a hood over our head and like we're never seen again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But anyways, that moves us to our next topic. So PlayStation 4 is ending its life cycle, evidently, or coming close to it. According to Sony recently, they said PlayStation 4 is entering the final phase of its life cycle. So the PlayStation chief, I don't know how to say his name, Odera, whatever. PS4 is entering final phase of its life cycle, which would have a negative impact to the unit, but recurring revenue via membership services, etc., should cushion some of that. Later, they told analysts and investors that the period until March 2021 would be when PlayStation to crouch down once to grow further in the future. But anyway, so it looks like that's kind of like the time frame, max time frame, or at least that they're throwing out there is 2021.
I think they're going to definitely stretch it out to 2021. The PS4 is still selling too well to just throw a PS5 in and just be like, oh, time to buy a new console.
Yeah,
I think they're going to try to work it slowly in some way. Like I think they'll announce it like in 2020, comes out in 2021, and they'll find ways to ease people from the PS4 to the PS5. Kind of similar to they did the 3 to 4, like they were releasing games for like both consoles, and then eventually people just found the appeal of PS4 and went over to it.
Yeah. Well, it seems like one of their biggest concerns is that I guess PS4 sales are still very, very good. They're just starting to slow down, and probably a lot of that is just because so many people have a PS4, right? So, and if you look at it from Sony's perspective, they don't make a ton of games. They make money off selling consoles. So from their perspective, they're like, okay, well, we have a digital store in which we sell games on there. We're going to try to emphasize that more to make money off that, more online subscriptions, kind of pad us out until we get to that next stage where we can sell the PS5. So that makes sense from their perspective, why they would want to phase the PS4 out. So it's just, I guess.
I think at this point that they'll want to keep the PS4 relevant for a much longer time than the PS3 was before. I think what we talked about this in a previous episode. I think of something they might do is like have PS5, like make games, but have it be like PS4 and PS5 hybrid, similar to how PS4 and the Pro are right now, where if you put this disc in a PS5, it will run like these type of settings, like it will run like the ultra settings of this game. And if you put it in the PS4 Pro, it'll run like the high settings. And then you put it in the PS4, it'll run it at like the medium to low settings of the game. But now you can play it on any 3 console.
Now that you said that, and I remember us talking about that in a previous episode, it kind of makes me think that was probably one of the main, not the only, but one of the main reasons Sony came out with a PS4 Pro, right? Because they wanted to get developers in that mindset that, hey, you need to make a game for a PS4 Pro that can also be played on a PS4. So you have to keep this in mind while making your game, right? And that came with its own like growing pains for developers, but they were able to get that done. And now they'll be more inclined and more used to the idea of, okay, well, a PS5 comes out. This game needs to be able to play low specs on a PS4, or if they own a PS5, it can run at max settings on the PlayStation 5. Because usually companies will try out new ideas in an experimental way without making it its flagship product. At least, that's what we used to see with even companies like Square, right? Back in the day, they used to try out all these crazy experimental games before they would actually implement the ideas into one of their main games, right? And so Sony's probably doing something similar, I would imagine. That's probably one of the main reasons they came out with the PS4 Pro, to try to just get developers ready for this idea that, like, hey, this needs to be geared towards, you're not going to be able to just make a game to play well with this, like, one setting. Like, it's going to have to appeal to a different range of settings, kind of like PC gaming.
Yeah, I guess kind of. But I think the one drawback to the idea of it is it may motivate people to not buy a PS5. So maybe they'll like do this at the start, but I think they might like slowly work people into making like, oh, this is PS5 exclusive. There's no way it'll work on the 4 or 4 Pro. It's like, sorry, but this one's PS5 exclusive. So that makes the marketing very confusing, where they may say one day, oh, these games will work in all 3 version consoles, and then next day they'll be like, oh, sorry, this doesn't work on the PS4, PS4 Pro. Now it's on the PS5, and that may turn people off and be like, hey, I thought I didn't have to buy a PS5 to get this. Now I do have to buy one, and I guess that's something you just have to be very careful with, or you have to stay dedicated to it, or find some other reason to make the PS5 very appealing besides being just a more powerful box.
Well, yeah. So that could be one thing, because I know me, the fact that we're doing this podcast and if they announce a PS5 like tomorrow, right, I'll probably end up buying one just so we can talk about it. But if we weren't doing this podcast, I would be very, very tempted to stick with my PS4 if I could play PS5 games until the price of the PS5 came down, right? So if the PS5 was $500 for just saying, right, I would be like, that's kind of steep. I'm sure it's worth it, but I know the price is going to come down if I just wait. Oh, look, all these games can be played on a PS4, so I'm not really missing anything aside from the game not looking as good as it could be. I'm probably just going to keep the PS4 for a while. I see what you're saying there. So yeah, they would have to phase that out eventually to try to, get people to buy a PS5. I don't know, because people aren't going to buy something if they don't want. They don't absolutely have to. I'm even thinking about, like, if you've ever worked in an office environment, trying to get people to update their work computer from Windows XP to or Windows 7 or Windows 8 to the next version of Windows. No one wants to do it, right? Because they're just happy with what they have. The idea of going to something new, they don't want to do that. And I think it's more so with the console. Like, if you already own the console, especially if you just recently bought one, maybe you just recently bought a PS4 Pro a year ago, you're not looking to spend another couple $100 so soon. You want to max out that lifespan. So if you can still play these games over a couple of, a year or two, then, and wait for the PS5 price to come down, I don't see why you wouldn't do that,
Yeah, I guess it's off and on for me. I guess it's depending on how pricey it is. Like the PS4 Pro, I think was like $400 to $500 when it first came out. And I'm still using my original PS4 because I don't find much appeal in the slightly more updated graphics that the PS4 Pro offers. I think it just offers a slightly better boost. And I mean, I'll definitely buy a PS5 because that's just straight out a next generation console. PS4 Pro is just like an alternative, like stronger PS4, which doesn't appeal to me as much. But then again, I am the person that has bought, ever since the 3DS came out, I have purchased the original 3DS, the 3DS XL, the new 3DS XL, and the new 2DS XL. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know why. I just wanted a bigger screen, and the 2DS was much lighter and feels better in your hand. So I got it for that. I mean, I guess it's just personal type of preference, but it's, I mean, I guess I'm just saying I'm off and on with when I decide I want something newer or better. And I'm still have my original Vita here. I never got the later models. I guess maybe I'm more interested in buying whatever Nintendo throws at me than Sony, even though I love both companies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I see what you're saying there, that there's some Sony, there'll be some portion of the audience or consumer base that is very, very committed to Sony products. And it might not bother them at all that they purchased a PS4, then recently bought a PS4 Pro, and then possibly in the next year or two, possibly 3 years, forking over a huge chunk of money to buy the PS5. It might not bother them at all. So yeah, I mean, there is that, but it sounds like we kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Sony's basic position on this seems to be that they believe that the PS4 is ending, like it's the final phase of its life cycle, that it's about that time where they need to start phasing it out because it's slowing down. And I can see where they're coming from that, but it sounds to me like we're basically in agreement that like we still think the PS4 has a lot of life left in it, At least that's what I think.
I think the audience at this point is just kind of confused on how long life cycles on consoles should be, because usually the typical lifespan of a console is about 5 years, roughly. But both Sony and Microsoft, like from the PS3 was from like 2006 to 2013 essentially. So that was much longer than the usual life cycle. And the Xbox 360 was 2005, I believe, to about 2013 also with the Xbox One. So that generation span was a lot longer, and Nintendo released 2 consoles within that, with the Wii and the Wii U. So I mean, they just kept us going as long as they can, and so now we got the PS4 and the Xbox One, and we're in 2018 now. So it's about 5 years right now. So people are kind of in that angsty territory. Like, are we going to be waiting even more years like we did with the Series 360? Or are we actually going to get one right around the corner? Well, and they're just hoping both Microsoft and Sony are communicating that. Yeah. And Sony is kind of. I mean, they're like, don't expect it right now. It's like, that's something that's possible in 2021.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you think about it, I think expectations for a life cycle of a console, I don't think, now I'm thinking about it, I think people will adapt depending on whatever becomes the norm, right? If you think about like your cell phone, people get new cell phones. They get a new iPhone every year or two. Every time the new iPhone comes out, they're just like, oh, I have to get this new iPhone. Despite the fact that the last iPhone can do almost all the same stuff that they personally did on a daily basis, right? They still don't mind going out and spending a couple $100 to buy a new iPhone. So if you put it in that kind of spectrum, I mean, whatever they do, even if a console life gets really short, let's say 4 or 5 years, I think the general consumers will adapt to whatever that life expectancy is going to be. It's going to be a little growing pains because it'll seem out of norm, but once it becomes the standard practice, I don't think people are going to really have an issue with it. But that did remind me of an article that you sent regarding this as well, in which there's some talk that Sony might be looking at a PS5 Switch type hybrid. At least they're looking at possibly coming out with another portable system. Some people are speculating whether the PS5 would be similar to like a PS Vita 2 kind of. I don't know exactly what they would do, if they would completely keep the consoles separate, but Sony seems to be thinking that, well, here, I'll just read this quote here. This is from Kadera, which I believe is the PlayStation chief. He says, in my opinion, rather than separating portable gaming from consoles, it's necessary to continue thinking of portable gaming as one method to deliver more gaming experiences and exploring what our customers want from portable. We want to think about many options. So it seems to me that they're at least like playing with the idea of making a future console more portable, right? More Switch-like. I don't know how far they would take that. I mean, because to me, the PS5 needs to be, it needs to look better than a PS4. It has to. It has to perform better. It has to do all these things better. So I don't know how difficult or it would be to take that to a portable system. Immediately, I'm thinking battery life and other challenges. Or I guess it could just greatly reduce the quality of the game. I don't know. I mean, you know,
let me ask you, why not both? And let me ask you what I mean by that is, why don't we have a PS5 and a Vita? Well, let's just call it Vita 2. Let's put a PS5 and the Vita 2, you put on top of the PS5. And you have the PS5, which is your basic, you know, more powerful boxed console, you know, the standard, more powerful machine. And then you can optionally buy the Vita 2, which is something they'll sell also, and do a better job marketing it and their memory cards, hopefully.
And it's a reasonable price.
Reasonably priced also, yes. And have it so it has its own set of games, and the PS5 has its own set of games. But you can, and they do a stronger job of the remote play feature and let you stream it from your PS5 to wherever your device is. I assume if you're in a Wi-Fi area,
sure,
it'll read your PS5 from home, and then play it, like, say, I don't know, while you're on a trip or something.
Right.
Like, say you're on a trip and you're like, oh man, but I really want to play this game that came out on the PS5. You put the game in the PS5 and you take the Vita 2 with you. And as long as you're in a Wi-Fi area, like say you're in a hotel and
you stream it,
you Wi-Fi, and you're streaming your console to your Vita 2. Now, the technology would have to be great enough that it can run that just fine. You see, and you're streaming it, it's still using the specs from the PS5 box itself, so it can potentially look and play just as well on your Vita 2.
I see. That's one way they could do it, but I think from what I've seen, I think the way they could do it, or this is what I think they should do. Since we're already hearing that it's probable that the PS5 will be able to play PS4 games and that the PlayStation 4 will be able to play PlayStation 5 games, just not to the same quality, right? If they're already going for that, I could see that if you had the Vita 2, if you stuck a PS5 game into the Vita 2, it would just play it at PlayStation 4 specs.
Possibly, but I don't think you would put a whole disc in the Vita 2.
Well, we don't know the size of the disc, right?
Possibly, but I would imagine they'd be using Blu-ray discs.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Or
this is kind of my idea.
that they use a physical cartridge.
Yeah.
Between the PS5 and the Vita 2. If they decide to go like that, similar to the Switch.
I don't like that. Yeah. True.
But the big thing is that discs are a lot cheaper to make.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of Sony using a cartridge, to be honest. It's just it just doesn't feel Sony to me.
They never have.
Yeah.
Well, except Vita.
Oh, that's true. But yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Now, they'll definitely go cartridge again for Vita 2 if they did make physical media. It's possible they may make it a digital only console, but I would imagine, well, assuming they don't believe that physical is dead, then they could put the cartridges back and even let you maybe play the old Vita games. But the thing I really was disappointed by in the Vita was that you couldn't use the UMDs from the PSP on it. Yeah, I understand, because UMD is a very outdated product. It's very loud. It's a lot of stuff you got to put into the device to get it to work. So I do understand why. It's just I wasn't a fan in general of not being able to play my PSP games on the Vita. Yeah. My physical games, at least.
Well, and that's just it. We might be jumping to some serious conclusions here that, or kind of ignoring some problems because, just like you said, it was just kind of expensive to have a Vita that could, play all this media from the PSP on it, even though that would be cool. If you look at that with the PS3, for example, the first model of the PlayStation 3 had the capability of playing PS2 games. However, on the next shipment or the next model that was released of the PlayStation 3, Sony yanked that feature out of the PlayStation 3 so they could drop the price of the PlayStation 3 because it was having a hard time competing, right? And once they removed this feature from the PlayStation 3, they could offer the PlayStation 3 for much cheaper or at least, a more reasonable price. And, that allowed them to be more competitive. So like, I imagine that they're going to have to make similar concerns with the PS5 because as much as they had wanted to be able to do all these things, I mean, if a PS5 comes out and it's $600, even if it's portable, if an Xbox, whatever they want to call it, 97X, if that thing comes out and it's $400, Xbox One at 97X is probably going to be winning the console war,
Yeah, I highly doubt Sony will go the Nintendo route. The Switch is very successful, but I don't believe it's successful to the point that it would motivate Sony or Microsoft to drop the idea of continuing their major powerhouse boxes, because I think you're really dealing with two different type of audiences with
I would agree.
With the Switch and the PS4/Xbox One. You're definitely appealing to different needs out of your customers. Like, because I definitely like a powerhouse box and I like the Switch. I think the PS4 and the Switch complement each other. They both give me different type of things I'm looking for in games. And I think Sony may just try to do the best of both worlds. I think they'll do a PS5 powerhouse box, focus more on their VR headset, I think also. And I think they'll just do like the Sony Switch thing, like as a separate idea.
Sure. Like a separate product that is sold like, hey, if you like the Switch, you might also like this, but you don't have to buy this. You don't have to purchase this if you just want that console experience.
Yeah, I think they'll just treat it like their own product and market a lot that it does work with your PS5 in many ways.
Kind of like the VR headset. When you buy a PS4, you don't have to get the VR headset, right?
Yeah, I mean, they should treat it truly like a Vita 2 or like their third portable generation. I think they just have to market it better, price it better, and that's really it. I mean, when the Vita first came out, it was a $250 portable device.
That's crazy.
That came with 4 gigabyte stick that barely holds anything. And if you want to upgrade to a 32 gigabyte Sony memory stick, it was $100. And 32, even at the time, it came out like 2012, I believe the Vita came out. It had 32 was a standard. Like if you got like a 3DS, you could go and buy an SD card of 32 gigabyte for like less than $10 and then stick that in there. And you have 32 gigabytes of data in your 3DS. So it's kind of embarrassing on Sony's end where they believe that just 32 gigabyte alone was $100. So if they make a new Vita, I know it was mostly security reasons they made their own, but they really have to make sure that stuff like that's reasonably priced or have like an internal like memory of like say like at least 100 gigabyte, and then you can expand upon it with like SD cards or whatnot to put in it. That's something they definitely have to do and price it very well, or they're just going to have another Vita disaster again in the West.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. I think that it's going to be interesting to see what Sony actually reveals whenever that actually happens, because I think it's gonna surprise us. I mean, because they've been kind of keeping the same trajectory. The PS2 was, a massive leap from the PS1, and thus so forth. And the only thing that's really changed between the systems is just the user interface, more online capability, wireless controllers, that type of thing, right? So I think like whatever they end up doing, it will surprise us. But I'm in total agreement. I think they're going to keep the trajectory of the console, and I am interested in what they push out as far as a mobile console. I mean, I do think the Vita 2, if they end up going with that name, right, I do think it would be more of a console portable deal like the Switch. I would imagine. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't just have a dock that you could put it down and just, play it right on your TV.
I'm sure they'll do that. I'm sure the Vita 2 will have a dock that lets you play on there. I'm very sure they'll try to compete with Switch in that aspect.
Yeah.
Because there is a patent. I talked about this last time, but they do have a patent for for their own Switch-like console where you put two sides of the PS controller on the side of the screen, and you put it in the dock, and you take the PS controllers out, you combine it together, and it's like a traditional like PS4 like controller.
Yeah. Well, and see, there you go. So they're at least looking at it, and we'll have to see what they actually do. But I'm starting to get excited to see what it is, because there's been so much speculation about it. We've gone all over the place. On one hand, the systems, the PS5 is going to be able to play PS4 games, and vice versa. And then we thought, well, maybe it's a Switch console. Then we're like, well, the Vita 2, what's this going to do? Like, we're all over the place. So I'm going to be excited to see what eventually is announced, and we'll keep following this. But I think it's time to move on to our next topic here. We have a recent release, leak, whatever you want to call it, the Final Fantasy VII Remake's new image, which it appears to be the Airbuster boss fight. So if you remember from Final Fantasy VII, this was the fight in which it happened right before Cloud falls from like the bridge, and right before you meet Aerith in the church. Right before that boss fight, right before that, it appears in this image that was taken for a job posting for Final Fantasy VII. There's some Final Fantasy VII remake footage, we think, or possibly some trailer footage of that fight where Cloud's with his Buster Sword and he's fighting this enemy. And from what we see in this image, it looks really, really cool compared to the old one. But there's some debate over whether this is from the game or if this is simply maybe some trailer footage that they're working on for the next showing of the Final Fantasy VII remake. I don't know. It's pretty hard to tell since Square hasn't really said. But I do think it's interesting that the game has at least been developed this far. I would imagine, right? Unless this is just his background image or something. But what do you think?
I think it might be something they're going to show off at E3 and just show some more trailer footage, possibly what they got under the hood for gameplay wise. I don't think they'll show us much of anything if this is what it is. I think it's just like a cutscene you see before the boss fight happens. Now, it may be in real time where they're using the actual graphical engine to show off the boss and everything. I doubt it's CG or anything. I'm sure the game looks good enough that it can run on its own, use animation from their own engine to convey what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And they may throw like a CG scene in there here and there, similar to 15. But I think that's what it is mostly. Just getting, it looks like they're just putting a trailer together.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting because, I mean, we can't get a really good look at Cloud here, but there's been a lot of talk about the fact that he's been redesigned. And granted, this is just the back of him, right? So it's not like we're getting a real close look, but he doesn't look dramatically different. I mean, we can tell this is Cloud. And at that point in the game, he's still supposed to be kind of that silly but acting tough guy. So he still looks pretty similar to the game.
I think if they were going to change him, I think they're just going to make his like facial features a lot softer to make him seem a little younger, and not as intimidating looking.
Not so serious.
Yeah. So it's easier to animate when it's like a serious moment or like a more comical moment.
So we're going to have Cloud with Titus's face.
Possibly.
Okay. Well, but I mean, there is this image out there, you know, and we could try to say, well, they're this far in development and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it is just an image, but it is pretty cool nonetheless. The hype for this game is getting pretty real because we had Nobuo Uematsu confirmed for this game. You know, seems like it's going in a positive direction. And now we have this screenshot, which is not nearly as exciting, but it does tell me that, you know, the game is further along than I was, or at least as long it's in works, right? So, because there's a lot of speculation like, oh, they had to restart over and like they're basically at the beginning again. So, you know, hey, that's, you know, what, 8 hours into the original game, something like that. So that's pretty cool.
Give us a comment what you think it is.
But anyways, so comment wise, we did have some comments about Xenoblade Chronicles. So we'll have to save that for next week. We are going to be talking about that game next week. So if you have thoughts about the game, whether it be the gameplay or the story, or maybe you never played the game, but you know, for some reason you have thoughts on why you never played the game and you want us to talk about it, bring those comments, leave them in this video, or you can do that in a different video and I'll try to find those and we'll try to consolidate those and we'll do that at the end of next week's episode. It's probably going to be a longer one, I would imagine, but look forward to that and we'll be talking about that next week. But other than that, that's all we got this week. So thanks for watching and please hit that subscribe button and we'll catch you all next week.
All right, take care all.